I went out and rented the local planetarium to watch some romantic movies on her birthday, and we had some friends with us for dinner beforehand. During dinner she was quiet and reserved and barely talked. That night, we tried fooling around in the planetarium. She seemed completely disinterested, and so she began texting her friend from work. I had already told her how much I hated the fact she texted him so much. He was also one of the friends who came to dinner with us beforehand. A few days after that, my wife was taking a nap and her phone went off. She had left it in her purse in the bedroom, and it kept beeping over and over again. I went in thinking I could keep it turned down to let her sleep while I played in the living room with our daughter. I saw that it was her friend texting, so the curiosity got the better of me. What I saw was two people talking about how much they missed each other when they were planning on meeting that week, and how they were both glad to be more than just duck buddies. I'm sure that word is censored out, but hopefully you get the point. I returned to the living room and said nothing. My wife came out of the bedroom an hour or so later and saw my face and immediately broke down. She told me all about her emotional affair, and that she was sorry and would never talk to him again. I never thought about leaving, ever. We continued on for a while, but we never sought out counseling because, according to her, we don't have the time or the money. I didn't worry too much about it because I don't like counselors much anyway. I continued to check her phone periodically and saw that she had been continuing to talk with him, but always deleted the messages. I didn't confront her about it because she worked with him, and she told me point blank that she would have to keep talking with him to have a decent working relationship. About 2 months passed and I checked her phone again. She hadn't deleted any messages, and I saw him flirting with her, and her promising to send pictures later that night in exchange for something nice he did for her at work. I confronted her about it that night and she told me that she was sorry again, but that she had been sending nude photos to him, getting nude photos from him, pleasing herself to his photos, videos, and making out with him at their workplace in the elevator. Again, I was devastated, but I told her I understood why she was doing this. She told me it was because I wasn't there for her emotionally and physically. I believed her, so we continued on. I asked that she be completely transparent with me, and she said that she had told me everything. Fast forward to about a month ago. Our home is full of people all the time, mainly her friends. I don't have many friends myself, and they are always using our shower and room to change. We had several instances in which she or I ended up doing someone else's laundry because we didn't pay attention. My wife left to go to her mother's with my daughter, so I was home alone for about a week. I found a pair of underwear in her top drawer that I thought were cute and proceeded to use them for my masculine needs. Hopefully this isn't too much, but I'm trying to give the whole story. My wife gets home and finds the underwear. She tells me they aren't hers and that she had never purchased underwear that looked like that. I had no idea since she hardly ever wears underwear in the first place. However, my naivete was my undoing and it made her immediately accuse me of cheating. After several days of talking and trying to convince her that I had not cheated and telling her what I had done with the underwear, she finally told me she believed me. She said she still felt like I was hiding something, but she wasn't sure what. Fast forward a bit to a few days ago, and again another accusation of cheating. I work with a female coworker whom my wife has told me acts as if she likes me. I told my wife that it was silly and that I do everything in my power to avoid that since I'm her superior. And she's not exactly good looking either. Well, my female coworker ends up laying her head on my shoulder and putting her hand on mine during work. And it hits me that my wife was right. I immediately tell my coworker that it is inappropriate on many levels and proceed to inform my superior. We get the coworker moved to a different shift so that I no longer have to deal with that issue. That night when I get home, I tell my wife all about it, all the while telling her I'm sorry I didn't believe her and whatnot. She immediately comes back with, "That's who I thought you were having an affair with." The way she looks at me is one of disgust, as if I'm lying to her and trying to get away with something. I told her immediately when something happened, and it doesn't seem to matter. Fast forward again to yesterday, and my wife asks me to talk to her in the bedroom. We lay down and she tells me she hasn't been honest with me. She tells me that it wasn't just the kissing and texting, but she also had slept with the OM. She kept looking at me, but I couldn't say or do anything besides apologize for not being the type of husband she could count on and saying sorry for not being stable enough for her to tell me everything right off the bat. I don't know what to think or do anymore. I feel completely numb to it all right now. We have had a couple issues pop up in the year since I first found out, involving her going out late nights with her friends and coworkers. Not the OM. A male friend of hers seems to be very into her, and they text every once in a while. She even at one point sent me a picture of her out at a bar with this new guy, trying to show me she was safe and having fun. Of course, telling her that it bothered me set off a whole slew of arguments about trust and whatnot. Every time I look at her now, I feel like I don't even know her anymore. She lied to me for a year and seems to be the first person to throw the blame. I suggested counseling, but it never got off the ground. I'm looking for any advice at all right now. I feel lost, hopeless, and completely insecure in everything I am. I do my best to keep our daughter happy, but that frightens me as well. I don't want to leave, but it seems like an option for her. Our daughter isn't technically mine. My wife had her before we even met, and I came around when she was about 2 years old. 4 years later, and I'm the only dad she has ever known. I love her to the end, but it worries me that I'm only sticking around for our daughter's sake. I don't even know if I can sort out my emotions right now. I spent the past few days thinking things through and spending time with her trying to figure out our life. I took off a couple days of work and she and I had a really good 2 days together. However, now that I've read what you all have said, I see that it was good because we didn't talk about the affair and I did my best to completely ignore it. It seems like that's the only time we get along now. It scares me to even think about leaving. I can't see myself leaving my daughter or her at all. If I did leave, I get no custody or rights whatsoever to my daughter because I haven't legally adopted her as of yet. My wife and I have talked about it before, but she isn't ready for it yet. I brought up to her that I know marriage isn't supposed to be easy and that you are always supposed to work on it together. But it seems as if our marriage has been nothing but constant problem. Something I didn't point out before was that the affair isn't the first time. She's had issues with cheating. When we had just started going out, she apparently was sleeping with a friend of hers on the side, before we had started getting physical. She told me several months ago and acted surprised that it bothered me since we weren't technically a couple yet. She then informed me that she had had a little fling with a guy at her previous work that involved texting and flirting at work. She then informed me that her old boyfriend from high school had started texting her again about how much he missed her and how much he wanted to get back with her. So basically, I've had a lot thrown on my plate the past week or so. I also know that I'm not the most emotionally outgoing individual in the world. I've done a lot to show her that I'm not completely able to deal with her emotion. So part of me understands wanting someone to connect with. Before we got married, she was exed by one of her male friends she had known for 18 years. And when I found out in one of our counseling sessions, I walked out and told her I didn't know how to handle it. It still bothers her to this day, and I understand why. I walked away from her when she needed me the most because I couldn't deal with the fact that some man had violated her, and I couldn't stop it. We eventually got back together about 2 days later, obviously. But I don't think it has ever left her mind. She has severe abandonment issues stemming from her father walking out on her when she was 14 and telling her it was her fault. Yeah, he actually said that, verified by her mother. So I don't know what to do. I keep trying to get her to go to counseling, but I don't know what to do. I don't want to leave my wife, but I don't know if things will ever get better between us. It feels like the only reason we're together is because of guilt and necessity. I hate this feeling, but I know I love my wife. I will be going to counseling. I start again this Friday, hopefully. So maybe that will help. And I know that's a lot to digest. I know people have it much worse than I do, so I hope no one feels like I'm trying to just bombard everyone with my sob story. It just feels good to write this out and have an anonymous third party see everything and let me know I'm not completely insane. Comments: you decide what is best for you. You have stated you love her and want to work it out. Just remember it takes two. You can't decide for her or force her to change her mind and stop the affair. You can be the better choice. Try to work on marital issues alone and eliminate behaviors that help make her vulnerable. But you are in no way responsible for the terrible decision she has made. I had to state what was needed to our no contact, NC, transparency. All email, texts, phone records, etc. are open in both directions. Then we could try. When she refused all of it, I put a time limit on her making a decision. Separation and divorce to follow fairly quickly if NC did not happen, or NC now in transparency, and we could try. Lucky for me she chose now but knew I was serious about the second option because I laid out financials, lawyer costs, and how it goes from my lawyer. I had already contacted him believing she would stall and stay in contact. I did not follow the 180 to the letter. I kept communication open. I let her know how I felt. To me the 180 is the last resort. Where do you plan to start? You have to get serious and lay out the choices. In or out. Not in between unless you want an open marriage where she continues with OM while playing with you. OP responds: I've taken time to read and reread a lot of your suggestions. I know I need to man up and be more confident, but I'm having such a hard time right now. My wife has always been able to easily get me to do whatever she wants by turning on the waterworks. And the past few days has been no different. I tried to talk a bit about it, and she disclosed all the details to me. My brain was working overtime with imagery and I told her I just needed to know. However, afterwards she broke down crying and told me how she felt so horrible all the time because she feels like I hold it over her head now. I don't want to be one of those people who never forgives and never lets go. I feel horrible right now. A couple nights ago though, my wife and I had bonded for the first time since she told me everything. She said it the most passionate we have had in a long time, but it wasn't for me. I was angry the whole time. I've never had it angry, but I did that day and I felt guilty the entire evening afterward. She tried to initiate again last night, but I couldn't stop thinking about the affair. We started kissing and my mind went straight to their affair. My wife stopped kissing me and gave me her disappointed look and went to the bedroom to take care of things by herself. I feel completely lost right now. It feels like I'm falling endlessly and I'm stuck in some loop watching the same things happen over and over again. What can I do? My ulcer has begun to act up again and my stomach feels like I've been punched and I still have the fist they're pushing in as hard as they can. I hate it. I spent about an hour last night calming down my daughter because when my wife and I tucked her in for bed, she began to sob hysterically. What about? Because my daughter didn't want me to leave her. I asked her why she thought I was going to leave, and she looked at her mother and back to me and said, I don't know. I have no idea what's going on. My daughter is in that stage of listening to everything and then repeating it. I spent the rest of the evening wondering what my daughter overheard my wife say, and when I asked my wife about it, she said that my daughter was just faking for attention. I've never seen something like that in my almost 4 years of knowing her. I feel like I'm at my wit's end. Counseling is still not an option to my wife, and I'm falling back into my same patterns of bending over backwards to get my wife anything and everything she needs. I feel trapped and I know it's because of my own doing. I know I have to step up, but it's just so much easier to pretend nothing happened. I can actually relax on the couch after a long day when I ignore everything. When I don't ignore it, I spend all day dissecting anything and everything I've ever done. I'm thoroughly convinced it's all my fault, even though I know it isn't true. My wife continues to have the nerve to tell me she worries about me not being a man of God because she doesn't want me to miss out on heaven. What God? I mean, seriously, there is no higher power out there watching over us. If there is, then he's just a little kid with a magnifying glass and we're the ants on the anthill he's torturing. I don't know. I have no one I can talk to because I'm embarrassed to tell my 1 or 2 friends I rely on. And I would never tell my family because I know what cheating did to my parents and myself when I was a kid. I apologize if I sound like a weakling who can't figure out what to do with my own life. At this point I know there is no other advice for me to get. I've gotten great advice from people who have been able to deal with things much better than I ever would have. I know it's up to me, but I need to vent. Some additional information, new developments. My wife has promised to never do it again. She's told me that she's sorry and that she knows it's her fault. However, I got nosy today and checked her cell phone before she left for work. I see that she has deleted the OM's name out of her phone, but she was still texting him. Nothing damning or anything, but just small talk with a few emoticons here and there. But there was something else that bothered me. I see that she has told another male friend at her work about her affair and is now in the process of telling him sorry for dragging him into things and that she hopes it won't hurt their relationship. It scares me to death that she's beginning another year with someone else yet again. I don't know how I should bring this up to her. She doesn't know I checked her cell phone. I don't want to be the one who has broken trust, so I'm at a loss for words right now. Just an update on the whole situation for anyone who cares to know. Read. My wife and I still together. We have talked several times about things, but we have no started counseling. I'm sinking into a very deep depression right now and I am not going to counseling right now either. I don't feel like it's going to help. There are times here and there in which my wife and I enjoy each other's company. Most of the time though, I'm completely lost in my own world in which I try to figure out how to deal with this whole mess. I spend all my spare time either reading or playing with my daughter. As far as I know, she had ended contact with both her original affair partner and the new guy she was contacting. I confronted her about the other guy, and she just looked at me and asked how I had found out. I told her that I had checked her phone, and that I should have told her immediately but was unsure how to approach the situation. She told me that she understands and that the only way for me to get over things and start to trust her again is if I can do that sort of thing from time to time. I hate it when she talks like that. I guess that's what I get for marrying a counselor. She also asked me if I wanted to stay married and I told her that I just didn't know. The look on her face made me truly think she feels remorse, knowing that something she did may cause me to move on hurt her badly. She also told me that if I really wanted a divorce then she wouldn't fight it. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. The fact that she so openly told me that worried me a bit, but I don't know. Right now, I'm convincing myself to stay around for my daughter. She's about to start kindergarten, and she's been so clingy to her daddy that I can't bear to not be in her life. I can't bear the thought of not being there in the morning to wake her up. I can't bear the thought of not being there to tuck her in at night. I'm okay with living like this if it means I don't have to leave my daughter and make her question why her dad left her one day. I know that many of you will want to reach through the computer and punch me in the face to wake me up. I know it's wrong. I know it's wrong to feel this way, and I know it's wrong for things to be this way. It's something I feel like I have to do. Sometimes you have to put others before yourself, especially your children. Just a little update. My wife and I are still together. I broke down and finally told her the only reason I hadn't left was because of my daughter. This was after she had decided to stay out late one night and drink with her best friend and the neighbor guy across the street. I was asleep long before she came home, but I could tell something was wrong the next morning. She then proceeded to tell me how her best friend ended up sleeping with the neighbor, who happens to have 2 kids and is supposed to be getting married in a few months to his fiancée. Of course, she acts as if she has no idea how this sort of thing could happen. I tried explaining how odd it is that a soon-to-be-married father of two would want to go out and drink with two mid-20s women unless he had that exact scenario on his mind. She didn't like that at all. However, I'm still around. The same night her friend, S, cheated, I found out that she had begun texting one of her guy friends at work about how much she missed him and how drunk she was. He never texted back that night, and I never got to check the phone later in the morning. I confronted her about it and she acted as if she didn't even remember doing it. Since then, she has apologized profusely for everything, has asked me what I want her to do to make our marriage work, and has stopped all contact with the men she was having a relationship with. She will be leaving her job in a few weeks and starting somewhere else closer to home. I want to believe things can get better. I really do. I just don't feel the same anymore. It's hard to describe, but I guess the only way to express how I feel is by saying I feel broken. I don't feel like a man anymore. I've begun stress eating again. I don't laugh or smile anymore, and my daughter has even noticed a change in me. She actually asked me why I didn't smile anymore the other day. It broke my heart, so I've been doing my best to be the best father I can be to her. Regular trips to the library, cooking together, making tents in the living room out of blankets, and bonfires in the cool evenings. Everything she enjoys, and it feels good to do it for her. My wife, though, I just can't see her the same anymore. We've had bond a couple times since my last posting. It's very mechanical, and it's obvious that I'm doing it solely because I'm her husband and it's expected. She has a very high desire, and I hear her complaints constantly that I don't want to get physical as much as we used to when we were first together. I try to be the best husband I can be, but I've found myself tuning her out lately because I can't stand her talking about work and other people. She gossips all the damn time, always judging those around her. I want to speak up and ask how she can judge others while she still has a lot of work to do to be a better wife. I don't do it though. She's got me beaten down so much that I would never insult her. I don't want to be ripped apart verbally. I've tried in the past to verbalize my thoughts and emotions, but she is incredibly talented in the art of argumentation. I always end up the bad guy, no matter what. I would say that I don't deserve it, but I do. I've spent every waking moment of my life pleasing others, always putting other people's needs and wants above my own. It's how I was raised. I was told that you had to do that to be a good person. I spent my entire formative years saying yes sir and yes ma'am to anyone and everyone around me. I still call everyone I know sir and ma'am. Even when I know I deserve better treatment, I fall back into my comfortable little existence and bend over. It's easier to do that. It's hard to man up, as I've seen written so many times on this board. Many of you will read this and pity me for being so self-loathing and so weak. Don't. Part of me is happy to be this way. I spent several years thinking I would never have a family, that I would always be alone. It may not be a good marriage, but at least I have someone to go home to. I have someone to talk to. I have someone that needs me. I'm not alone, and if it means that I'm unhappy, then so be it. I'd rather be unhappy with a family than happy and alone. Last night was a horrible night. I was buried in a book all evening, as I normally do, to try to ignore the constant thoughts of her affair and my ever-increasing depression. And my wife continually asked me what was wrong. She hadn't done that in a long time. My response all evening was that I was fine. Of course, she didn't believe that, and neither did I. Fast forward to later on, we tuck our daughter in and my wife asks me to come outside to talk. I don't really feel like talking, but I do it anyway. My wife looks me straight in the eye and asks if I want to stay in the marriage and if I still love her. I tell her that of course I love her still. I don't think I would ever stop loving her, no matter what would happen. However, at this point I don't know what happened inside of me. I had to tell her everything. I finally told her that the only reason I hadn't left yet was because I didn't want to be just another man who abandoned his kids. I didn't want to be my daughter's father who abandoned her. Other than that reason, I said that I don't see our marriage ever getting any better. She continued to look at me. No crying, no whining, and no sign of emotion. I asked how she could act that way, and she responds, I've learned to compartmentalize my emotions. It won't do any good for both of us to be an emotional wreck right now. I hate it when she does this, when she turns on counselor mode, when she starts treating me like one of her patients. I tell her, and she says she isn't doing that. She just wants to have an open discussion about our marriage and what we can do to make our lives better. Well, I basically spilled my feelings completely and totally. I cried when I told her how I didn't deserve this, that no matter how terrible of a husband she thought I was, that I never deserved to be treated how she treated me. We also began to talk about our entire marriage, which is only 3 years so far. I told her how hurt I am that for our first year of marriage, she decided to spend most of her time away from me and our daughter so that she could go out and smoke pot with her friends. She comes back with how insensitive it is for me to say that because she was still dealing with her ex from a year before. Of course, my response is that if that was still something you were dealing with, then why get married? She didn't have a response except that she loved me. Of course, we then move on to our miscarriage and how it negatively affected us. She tells me that she doesn't think I ever truly got over it yet. I tell her it was 2 years ago, and it still hurts to think about, but I don't dwell on it anymore. We then move on to how hurt she still is over the fact that when she told me about her ex, I left the counseling session and didn't talk to her for 2 days. She says she is still afraid I'll walk out when times are tough again. I tell her that I'm still here after the affair, and she starts crying. Now, this isn't her normal crying. This is her I'm completely broken and I don't know how I can go on type crying. I ask her what she's thinking, and she tells me that she knows she messed up, that she knows if I wanted to leave, I would have been out. She knows that I didn't deserve that type of treatment. I ask her how she could have put herself in a similar situation with the guy across the street, earlier posting. And she says she needed to be able to see for herself that she could resist that sort of temptation. I bring up the fact that the same night she was resisting temptation, she decided to start a text message conversation with one of the guys from her work that has feelings for her. She says that she just wanted to say hello and be friendly with him because he always makes fun of her when she's drunk. How many times have you been drunk around him before? I ask. Just a few when we went out to the bar after work. It's at this point that we begin discussion on our renewal of vows scheduled for this December. I hadn't mentioned that before in this posting because it just seemed like too much information. My wife still wants to do it because it would be like a fresh start. We'd be getting a chance to begin again without any huge problems lingering over us this time. Last time when we got married, we had her ex and the miscarriage very close together. Not the greatest start, I know. I tell her that I can't view it as a fresh start when I'm still trying to get over what just happened. All hell breaks loose. Wife, I've been working on this wedding for over a year. She says, yeah, while you were out sleeping with some other guy and telling me you love me every day. Wife, I still love you and I would never have left you. I wish I wouldn't have ever told you about it all. You didn't tell me. I found out because you left your cell phone out and I wanted to check to see if you had anything on your schedule the next day. You were talking about how much you missed each other, that you wanted to be more than duck buddies, and that you were planning on having a date that week. You were even talking about ways to fool me into thinking you had to work late. Wife, I was planning on ending it with him the next day after those messages. I just had to play along to make sure he didn't have any of the pictures I sent him of myself on his phone. He could have gone to HR and gotten me fired. So, what was more important, your job with him or your marriage? Wife, my marriage, but it would have been so embarrassing to have everyone know at work. I couldn't let them find out. At this point I lost it. I know I shouldn't have, but I did. I told her that I didn't want to be married anymore, that I didn't want to be in a relationship with someone who could lie to me straight in the face so many times and still feel like the whole situation was warranted. She became stone cold again. She asked me point blank to decide whether or not I would leave. It was my decision completely, and she wouldn't fault me for walking away. All she asked is that I imagine our future and see if I couldn't see us being happy together in 50 years. I told her that I couldn't. I told her that since we've been together, dating and marriage, she has slept with a previous boyfriend multiple times while we were first dating. She had an emotional affair with a guy from work while we were seriously dating. She texted with a previous boyfriend while married. She had an PA with a guy from work. And I had caught her in the beginnings of another with a second guy from work. I told her that all I could see in our future was me becoming a doormat. Someone who would just see my wife constantly seeking other men's attention and always knowing she could come home to her old standby. I told her I didn't want to be that standby, that I wanted to be her only man and that I didn't see it working out that way. She promised me multiple times that she would never stray again. I sat in silence for a while. I had to think things through. I know my wife very well. If I did walk away, I may end up happier than I have been in a long time. However, she would do everything she could to make sure that I would be the bad guy for leaving. I wouldn't see my daughter ever again. My mother-in-law, whom I love more than my own mother, would have yet another reason to hate men. I would lose the only family I've ever really felt like I've had. After everything I had said and felt, I told her I wouldn't leave. I told her that I would never leave. It was a complete switch for her. She became happy and wanted to hold me. I let her, of course, and she asked if we could still do the wedding. No, I don't want that. She immediately became secluded again. My wife isn't used to not getting her way. I know I'm a broken man right now, but I just can't do a wedding right now. I'm going to try to mend my marriage and myself. I don't see how I can do it at this point, but I'm going to try. I know it's a weird situation. I know some of you don't understand, and the more time I've had to think about things today, I have begun to no longer understand my own logic as well. I feel like a doormat, like a worthless piece of garbage. All I can think about today is that we have both let each other down so much. I've tried to be a good husband. I know I'm a good father. I don't know what I can do to get through this. The thought of started coming back into my mind again today, but I immediately blocked it out because I would never do that to my daughter. Earlier today, my wife started texting me and asking me why I didn't look at her during bonding last night. Yes, we gotten physical last night. It was angry on my part, but she seemed to enjoy it greatly. I told her it was because when I look into her eyes, all I can think about are the lies and the other man doing what I'm doing. She hasn't responded back to me all day, but it's okay, I guess. My comment, Part 2 ending will come out today. Let's seek an OP fix all of this.